I do love my cats. They're independent like me.
Yes.
They do whatever the F they please.
Mm-hmm.
And I choose to be that way too.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah.
Team cats.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk tails. Next on Tales of Taylor, I have someone who I've known seriously since I started my business back in 2014. She is the CEO of Aligned at Work, a leadership development consulting firm with an emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion, and what I personally feel the most important part, belonging. And this helps leaders solve people problems before they become profit problems. During her 35 plus year career, she worked for some of the nation's largest investment and banking companies, as well as some of the nation's smallest. And she believes in balancing people and profits for a sustainable future. And her superpower is building trust quickly with clients, team members, and diverse communities. It's Laurie Battaglia. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, and I'm really happy to be here.
I am really happy that you are here.
Yeah.
Do you remember the tale of how we first met?
I do. Our mutual friend, Laurie Battaglia, had you come to a retreat that she and I did together, and you were taking pictures of us and getting video. And I remember going out to the garden that they had there and doing a testimonial for you.
Yes.
And wow, we've both come a long way since then, haven't we?
We definitely have. I feel like that testimonial might actually still be on our website because it was so good.
Could be. I'm sure I looked much younger then.
Hey, you look great.
You probably
still.
did too.
I probably did too. Yeah, it's been a few years.
Yes.
So that was just such a great opportunity. I remember, truthfully, you were probably the second person I've done work for on my own.
It's fantastic.
So thank you for trusting me back then and continuing to trust me.
I love referring people to you because you always give such great service and a product that everybody's happy with. And I run with a crowd that could be a little picky if things weren't the right way. But let's just say they have discriminating tastes. They're professional speakers and that kind of thing. So you always come through.
Well, thank you. Everyone you've ever sent me has been fabulous to work with. So
fantastic.
Thank you so very much. I cannot thank you enough for that.
You're welcome.
So I'd love to know the tale of what got you to get to Aligned at Work. What's the tale behind the name of that business and the brand and the mission?
Yeah, so I wanted my own business since 1993, and I stayed in corporate till 2015. And I came out thinking I was going to have a business called something like Whole Self Leadership or Whole Self Coaching.
We had Living the Dream Coaching.
We had Living the Dream Coaches. Yes, that's still our LLC because Joe and I had a side hustle. It was a side hustle for me because I was still working at one of those really big banks. So when I came out, I had this idea, but someone had trademarked it just before that. And I thought, well, I guess it's not meant to be. So I had a wonderful branding coach, still a good friend, Lisa Stedman out in Los Angeles. And Lisa did what she called a divine download and gave me a list of maybe 8 or 10 names. And Joe and I looked through them, and Aligned at Work kept standing out from the rest of them. They were all good. Mm-hmm. Now I guess you'd run it through ChatGPT or Claude AI or one of the things.
Yes.
But they came right out of Lisa's brain. And the more I looked at it, initially alignment meant to me that you were aligned within yourself to the kind of work that you were doing, to the mission that you had in the world. Mm-hmm. But it has evolved over time to and it's about team alignment. It's about business alignment. It's about the people and the profit and all the alignments that you can imagine. So it kind of, it resonates with people. And the word align and alignment's out there a lot more right now than it was back in 2015, 16 when I filed that DBA to do businesses aligned at work.
Excellent. And then even your logo, when I look at your logo, I see a couple different colors. I see not quite full circles. Tell me the vision behind that.
Yeah, the logo initially was all teal. Mm-hmm. And I love teal, and you can see that I wear turquoise teal kinds of things sometimes too.
I do love those frames.
I love these frames too. They become my statement piece. They kind of walk in before I do. And we realized that me coming out of banking, maybe I would be doing business in financial services. So we added the dark blue because it was a little bit more corporate and all that. And then the rest of them were just recommended as accent colors. And we used that throughout the brand. But it was really the teal that stood out for me.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, as I look at that teal and turquoise are pretty similar colors, to me anyway. And we do a lot of indigenous work.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of turquoise embedded in those
the best jewelry.
communities and cultures and all the things.
Yes.
So it's been cool for me to be able to see something evolve. You know, you do it back when for one reason, and then it like sort of grows with you and becomes other things as well.
That is excellent. Now, I do love those color schemes, and then even the bit of orange bringing light and brightness, and also orange tends to be like the working class color a bit, so it's like approachable.
Good point. Yes.
So, I love that.
Yeah.
I love all of that. So tell me the tale that made you. I know obviously you said you wanted to start your own business back in 93, but it took some time. So what was the delay in the transition?
Well, life kind of got in the way. So what happened was,
darn life.
I know. I worked for a smaller savings and loan on the East Coast. I did about 20 years in 3 different savings and loans. And that middle one went under. And the government came in and took us over. I had been pushed kicking and screaming into training. I did not want to do it. I was a command and control person back in the day. And I really liked being a regional sales manager. And they thought it'd be a great idea to push me into training because I did classes at night for banking. And I was not a happy camper. But as I sat in that training room one day, I thought, boy, they're really screwing it up out there. I've worked for the all profit and the all people organizations, and neither one quite hits it. Why don't they balance people and profit? Because I was there living the life of, if you don't keep an eye on the profit, you will go under. And if you make the numbers say funny things, you will go under. So, but you have to have focus on the people. And so out of that kind of came this balance of the people and the profit. Well, at the time, my first marriage was it was the beginning of the end. It was interesting because I was at a savings and loan that went under, and so was he, different one. And that put pressure on an already questionable marriage. And so as I was thinking about my own business, I thought, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I put a lot of reasons or excuses out there. I don't have a degree because I was a 17-year-old mom. So I was kind of busy when other people were going to college. So I don't have a degree. I don't know how the big companies work. I can't do it right now because I'm getting divorced. And so I began to patch the holes in that. And I went over to a smaller savings and loan so that I could kind of land and get my feet under me. Marriage ended. Well, now I can't do it because I'm single and I don't have another source of income. And I still don't know what I'm doing. I still don't have that degree, but I'm back at school now. But I don't know how the big boys work or the big companies work. And in that time, I would have said the big guys. So then I met my beloved Joe. And Joe brought 4 wedding presents, the 4 stepkids, all of whom were either in or heading into college within a 5-year period of each other because there's twins on the tail end. So that took a lot of money. It was always money fears, money concerns. Is this going to work? What if I bankrupt us? All the things. And so I couldn't do it because of the wedding presents. And then we decided to move to Arizona from Pennsylvania. That was going to take a lot of money. So it was money. And then I got out here, had taken a job with Vanguard where I chose poorly. I had the wrong job and the wrong boss. And I could feel that it wasn't working. And I thought, should I jump now? But we were at the bottom of the recession. Great for buying a house in Arizona. Highly recommend.
Yes.
But not great for launching a new business when you don't know what you're doing and you've never done it before. So I waited. And then now we're too close to retirement. And so there's always something. 22 years later, I'd say about 20 years later, Joe looked at me and said, we're never going to make a go of this unless you go into a full-time, are we? And I said, no. But I have a plan. We'll do this in 2015 or 2016. So what happened was in 2014, my mom passed away. She was 92. She had a great life. But she left me enough money to live on for a year. And I thought, surely I must be able to get this business up and running and successful in a year. Well, yes.
Yeah.
But it takes a while to become profitable and get it going and figure it all out.
Year 1 is the toughest.
Yeah.
So anyone out there in year 1, keep it going.
Oh my gosh. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other and make sure that 22 years of worried about money was not really unfounded, because if you don't have a cushion or somewhere to go, sometimes people don't pay you on time. Sometimes they don't pay you at all.
Okay. So a year into business, so you have a cushion-ish for a year.
Yeah.
What happens after that first year?
We started to make money probably about 2 years in. And I got a little smarter about things. And it's been, kind of a roller coaster ride. Last year was one of those years where a lot of us in the kind of work I do slowed down at some point, spring and summer, because of clients stalling. There was a lot of wait and see kind of stuff. And even existing clients were just not moving forward. So I would say to anybody that is starting a business, like, make sure you're ready.
Yeah.
Because
and look to the markets, because sometimes current events do hesitate people, do make things change.
Yes.
So I don't think you should always blame yourself per se for things not happening right away.
Right.
There are forces that are beyond your control.
Right. And just when you think you've got it all figured out, then the environment changes.
Yes.
And then you have to pivot and adapt.
Yes. We had COVID. We had.
Yes. Well, it taught us to do a lot of virtual events. I will say that. But I realized coming over here today to talk to you that I very rarely leave the house anymore during the workday. And so I don't think I know how to budget my time to get dressed, put on makeup, and change my clothes and drive somewhere. So it's been kind of interesting, the evolution that things have taken.
The transition of it all, yes.
Yeah.
And through those virtual events, so I know I've had the pleasure of working with you as, the behind the scenes producer. And, in the bio, we also mentioned, you do a lot of DEIB work. And I feel like there's always education and talk about DEI.
Definitely.
Why do you feel it's so important that it's DEIB?
Yeah. So the belonging piece, I remember when I started hearing that word, and it was probably good 10 plus years ago. And I have a friend, Rose Perry, who wrote 2 books on belonging. Okay. So I always look to him as the guy that really gets it, that really understands it.
What were the names of the books, if you don't mind sharing?
His first one was, let's see, Belonging at Work. And his second one is Imagine Belonging. Okay. And he looks at himself as a writer who speaks. And I look at myself as more of a speaker and a consultant that also writes.
Okay.
But Rhodes really does a great job with digging into that. And there are things that lead people to feel like they belong. And I usually ask people when they're in our classes, think about a time when you really felt like you belonged in that room or in that space with people. And then think about a time when you feel like you didn't. And nobody likes it when they walk into a room and they're like, I must be at the wrong place because these might not be my people. And then maybe it goes on and you're like, no, they definitely are not my people. And you can't wait to get out of there. Well, imagine going to work every day and feeling like that. So I think another piece that went into Aligned at Work in the first place was I have watched our corporate systems chew up people and spit them out. And it was me from time to time, many times, because I do speak my mind. Didn't always go well in corporate. Sometimes you got to go someplace else. But now, at the age and the experience that I am, people look to me for the wisdom and the leadership because, as they say here in Arizona, it's not my first rodeo. And so I really feel the passion to help workplaces heal so that people can feel like they belong and if they want the financial numbers, I don't have them memorized, but there's a lot of data out there that says if your team is more diverse, you make more money. If your team feels included, you make more money. If they feel like they belong, they're probably not going to leave you.
Right.
There's all the studies are out there and throw equity in there too. There's all the studies are out there if people care to see them. And if they care to take the political lens off of diversity and put it in the human arena, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people's lives.
Yeah.
And if people are treated well and they feel like they belong in that crowd of people, they're going to give you more than they would if they're just sort of putting in time. And I just think that a lot of businesses miss that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you think about really great coaches, I love sports. And so I think about great coaches and, you hear athletes, I'd go to battle any day for that person.
Yes.
And it's because they feel belong, they belong with that group. And it's why don't we want to strive for that connection in business all the time?
Yeah. 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 I think people are just missing the boat. It's funny that you bring up coaching too, and sports, because sometimes we have clients come to us for coaches and they'll say something like, well, I'd like someone that has, this is how I hear it, exactly my background, exactly everything I've gone through, that they understand me fully and can coach me. And a good coach doesn't really need to know how you do what you do. It's nice if they know the language of your industry, because then you feel like you don't have to interpret a lot. But on the other hand, if they don't, they often see things more clearly. And when people are like, well, why would I want a coach though that doesn't know my industry, doesn't know my background? And I always say, do you love sports? I don't, by the way, but I don't understand it. But and I've tried not to, frankly. But if you understand sports, some of those coaches are the best coaches. We're not the best players.
Very true.
And yet they know how to coach you. And I've benefited from that in training, where I had a great boss, coach, whatever you want to call her, who I don't think she could, she was really good at what she did, but I don't think she could pull off what she was teaching me to do.
Interesting.
Yes. And yet she was so strong and so good at helping me get out of my own headspace, try things differently, and then learn that, yeah, they do really work. So, kudos to Pam.
That's
because
awesome.
She's amazing.
So what are attributes that you look for in a good coach?
Well, I'll tell you what I look for in my own self. And then, people can kind of take that and go where they will with it. For myself, and I have a couple of different coaches, I do like a proven track record. I like other people's testimonials about them. Like, wow, they caused me to think differently. Maybe they care about having an accountability coach, and that's important to them. I have two main coaches I go to, and probably random other ones. Right now I'm writing a book, so I'm a book coach. But I have a somatic coach, which is about the full embodiment of shifting and changing your thought patterns. So it's like, where do you feel it in your body and all those things. Somatics is really interesting. And I have that coach as a result of another program where they teach you how to get your business up and running and then scale it. And following their processes, I've been able to grow my business.
Nice.
But my somatic coach is somebody that I meet with monthly. Now, initially it was more intense. And now that we've been on a couple of years together, I'm monthly. And just knowing that I'm going to be meeting with her, and she sends me a message on Voxer every Friday, so I'll probably have one today. She keeps me, that relationship with her keeps me focused on what I need to do and how I need to transition my thinking. I think that we all come to it with our own background, and we see things the way we see things, and then we act on that. So for me, I'm interested in somebody that gets me, somebody that honors who I am and doesn't try to force me into their mold, because I will rebel like a teenager. And somebody that can help me shift my patterns and is patient with me over time, because it isn't always an immediate thing. Sometimes people want to look at education, certification, all those things. That tends to be important to some and not to others. Most people come looking for somebody that they resonate with, and then they do kind of an introductory call, see if we hit it off, a chemistry call.
Well, sometimes life experiences mean way more than a piece of paper you purchased, basically.
Definitely, yes. And so everybody comes to a little bit differently, but it is important that you build up a level of respect with a coach and feel like you're connecting with them. Yeah.
And so in addition to all the amazing things that you do for businesses, you're a Reiki master?
I am a Reiki master.
So how did that come to be?
Yeah, that happened back in the early 2000s in Pennsylvania. I moved physically out of my small town in Pennsylvania down to the suburbs of Philadelphia. And sort of things opened up. I got exposed to different kinds of backgrounds and learning that I had not witnessed where I came from. Now, I will tell you this. Once I knew it was there all along. But it wasn't my time to encounter it and learn it. And I was teaching leadership at Vanguard. And the leadership program had not only the leadership gurus and all that kind of stuff in there, but they had Eastern philosophies built into it. Things like the Tao of, I don't know, the Tao of something was something I can't remember what it was now, what we read. We looked at, Aikido and what that meant. And these things that I had never heard of before. So I'm kind of in this place of transition. I'm divorced. I'm not remarried. That took about 5 years. And I'm kind of in this spiritual growth place. And so I saw things coming in my path, and Reiki showed up, and then Reiki showed up, and then Reiki showed up. And I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And I went to a workshop actually on past life regression. And the person who became my Reiki master was one of the teachers of that. And we had to do an exercise where we looked into each other's eyes and did this thing, we could say or not say anything. And she told me that we had been in a past life together. And at first I was like, I don't think so. And then I was like, oh, she might be right. And so then she ran a class. And I came out, I'm Pennsylvania Dutch, so very German. And my people, as we would say, do not touch. And there's a lot of personal space between.
Okay.
You're not huggers. Germans, not huggers.
I haven't witnessed enough, I guess, to really recognize that.
Not those Germans back in the day. It was very much arm's length kind of stuff.
Okay.
You'll tell each other you love each other.
Oh gosh, I grew up in an Italian-Irish household, so it's kiss on the cheeks. It's,
the opposite of that.
Very opposite, okay.
Very opposite of that. And that's my dad's people, but that was the house that I grew up in. And my mom was a hugger and things like that. But I think she sort of tamped that down a bit.
Interesting.
So,
yeah. Gosh, I feel like I was kissing my parents on the lips like way longer than was nowadays. Maybe
never happened in my whole life.
Interesting. Wow.
Never happened in my whole life. So, so I wanted to be able to actually hug, touch, not freak out when that happened, kind of thing. At that point, that was my whole goal. And then I got in there, and I can't say that initially I had any extraordinary, energetic experiences. People who were in the class with me were like, I was doing myself Reiki and I saw colors and a swirl, and I'm like, okay.
So I apologize. I've heard Reiki I've heard
I should
the
explain.
Phrase. To be completely honest, I have no idea if Reiki is you put an incense in the atmosphere.
Okay.
I really do not know. I've heard the phrase many times. Not a clue.
So Reiki is about universal life force energy, REIKI, for people who have not heard of it. And basically you are channeling energy from the creator, God, source, whatever folks want to, universe, whatever label people put on that, through you. It's not yours. It comes through you, and you lay your hands on. Some hover their hands above the body. I actually put my hands on your body.
Okay.
And you may or may not feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm asking, we'll call it for today, creator energy. I'm asking creator to send the energy into you for your best use, whatever that is. Okay. It might be physical, it might be mental, it might be spiritual, psychological, whatever your best use, highest power is, it goes into you. It's very woo-woo. And there are 3 steps to it. You learn it, and then you learn some other stuff, and now you're able to teach others.
So it's like a non-contact spiritual massage.
Yeah, it's not, there's no like this.
Yeah.
It's more just hands-on.
Right.
Yeah, it is contact.
Okay.
Although some hover their hands and don't lay it
so
on.
it's like an optional contact, spiritual.
Yeah. Most lay hands on, some don't.
Interesting.
But yes.
Okay.
And people wonder, will it mess around with their religion? It will not. Because it's the energy of love, and it's the energy of, it can only do good.
Yes.
So and there's a Japanese gentleman who originally kind of put it all together, and then it was very held, how shall we say this? Very exclusive. And that was, as it got passed down, it got very exclusive. I had to choose you if I'm the Reiki master.
Ooh,
as opposed to you coming and asking for it. And so that's shifted and changed over time. But the way people go about it and the energy that we live in tends to shift and change over time. And so sometimes what is good now may not have been good. Well, what is effective, I guess I would say now, may not have been what was needed before. So all the person has to do that's on the receiving end is accept that it might be something. Like they don't even have to, but you don't, here's what you don't do. I don't say, Taylor needs fixing. I'm going to send her some energy.
Okay.
Like without your knowledge, without your permission. And it's not my job to fix you or even judge you to need the fix.
Okay.
So people come for it when they want to unpack some stuff or they just want to experiment with it or try it. And it's pretty much accepted now versus back in 2005 when I started in 2003, 4, and 5.
Okay.
So
I've known you this long and I did not know that aspect. Yeah. I saw that on the bio and I was like, what? And yeah, I've heard that phrase.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pinpoint what it really meant. I don't know if it was acupressure or
yeah,
what.
I've studied a lot of the other modalities and that's the one that remains with me.
Okay.
And the house that I live in here doesn't have a great space to do Reiki because it's not a big place. And it's, I did have my own Reiki room, but once my husband and I really realized that we had very different working styles, we had 2 separate offices.
Yes.
We have a small, like 1960s built house. So the rooms are little, but he's got his, I got mine. We got a bedroom, we got a guest room, and there's no Reiki room. So I have done things with it and I've taught people here, but I haven't had Reiki shares, which is when a whole lot of people get together. One of us gets on the table and people get around and everybody lays hands on that person. And for people who are, I would say, Christian in upbringing and belief, it's like laying hands on and praying.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really the same kind of energy where you're just channeling that prayer into the person. Doesn't interfere or collide with anybody's religion, although some people think it does.
Yeah, I wouldn't know why you would think it would, especially with how
Usually you don't
phrased
understand it and you're thinking the person has the power, but it's not me. It's just through me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a full Reiki education. I
Now
appreciate
you know.
that. Now I know. So back on, more about you and your journey, is there a tale you wish you would have told your younger self or, it even could have been your corporate self?
Well, part of me is like, I shouldn't have waited that 22 years. I should have done this sooner. And yet, I don't know when that would have been, given how I grew up with parents that came through the Depression. And, there might not be enough. There might not be enough.
Yeah.
There might not be enough. So that being, deep in my soul from the time I was little, I'm not sure I just could have made that. I'm the only one in my family who has their own business.
Right.
Everybody else, corporate.
I can imagine generationally, like I was raised too, like you find a place, you work there, you get the pension.
Yes.
Like that's
Why would you leave a perfectly good job?
Exactly.
Yes. And
the
I
enemy you know is better than the enemy you don't know.
There it is. There it is. So, yeah. So I think my younger self, I would have said, take more chances, but I really didn't grow up like that. And I'm not sure the world would have supported it even.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
That's one thing. Yes.
Yeah.
So, so I can get a tally on my side. What's your favorite animal with the tail?
The animal, cats?
Yes. See, we got another cats on there. All right. If we look at the tally, the dog-cat round. Oh, man. I knew I had a winner here. So
Yes. Yeah, the cats are definitely part of my life.
Yes.
I've had dogs and I love them. But my last dog passed probably around 2006. And he was, unfortunately, for all the rest of the dogs, my favorite, very much part of who I was, went through a lot with me. And then we decided we just didn't want to be tied down like that. So we got cats thinking that they were going to let us be footloose and fancy free. And I unfortunately had adopted 2 cats that went diabetic on me. And that means that you or someone has to be there every 12 hours for those shots. And one is still kicking along at almost 15 years old.
Wow.
He now goes for a monthly shot for his arthritis. And the other cat is just like a random street cat that I adopted that I'll never take him back to the vet because he becomes a raving lunatic.
That is my Xena. She will never go, unless she is on her deathbed
That's
or
what I
broken
said.
leg where she can't run. That is the only time she is going.
Same with Max.
Yep.
Yeah, he'll never go back again. But I expected more Max, less Cheddar and Gizmo. And I got Cheddar and Gizmo. And so Gizmo's an angel now. But yeah, I do love my cats. They're independent like me.
Yes.
They do whatever the F they please. And I choose to be that way too.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah.
Team cats.
Yes. Yes.
And so, I know in business, it's always great to be learning, and I learn a lot through books. And, I also enjoy books. So what are some of your favorite tales you've ever read or even heard if you use Audible?
I tend to read more than to listen. And may my mother, God rest her soul, not take this out on me, but Mom talked all the time. And I learned to zone out when somebody's talking to me.
Okay.
But then I have the art of coming back in and saying, this is what she'd be like, you're not listening. What did I just say? And I could repeat it, but I didn't. She's like, I know you're not listening.
So that's where my son's
She's
getting it, because he always tells me to stop talking.
Right. So I don't do Audible. But I would say a book that made a big difference for me and also made a big difference for my former boss and coach, Pam, was The Purpose of Your Life. It's not a purpose-driven life. It's The Purpose of Your Life by Carol Adrian. And it was the first time I had seen that, and I was given it by a family friend, Randy Doty, back in Pennsylvania. And I left it late for 18 months because I was busy wrapping up my bachelor's degree. He gave it to me when I got my associates. Mm-hmm. And then I went to a 1.5 year long program and I wrapped up the bachelor's. Then I read it. And it was about how people come into our lives for reasons that it's sort of like people show up when you need them to show up or when you're ready for it, or sometimes you're not ready for it. But there's a reason that happens. And it got more into the spiritual realm, whereas I'd been raised Lutheran and was more religious than spiritual. It was this whole different look. And I began to pursue that and think, And then I bought another one of her books. And it was, what was that one called? When Your Life Changes or You Wish It Would. Mm-hmm. And I knew my life was changing because I'd met Joe and we were getting married. And it was really that one that I was reading, and he was already asleep, and I was reading this book, and I felt like the words Sedona Retreat House glowed on the page. And so I said to Joe, this is how I got to Arizona, I said to Joe the next day, sometime when we've gone different places and stuff, and we need somewhere new to go, I'd like to go to Sedona. And he goes, oh, okay. And I say, I don't know where that is or why. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, this is getting interesting. And I said, well, if you need me to shut that back down, I can. Because like I said, I was in the middle of my up-leveling spiritual journey. And he said, no, this is good. And he said, well, it's in Arizona. And I literally said to him at that point, Arizona? And he said, yeah. And I was like, what's there other than brown desert?
That's what I thought. I had never visited the state before moving here. Yeah.
Bingo. And so basically I was like, he says, well, you let me show it to you in the spring. And because Joe had been stationed in Yuma for 2 years with the Navy back in the Vietnam era time when you were, enlist or be drafted. Mm-hmm. So he enlisted and he said, let me take you there. So he comes home the following night and he said, for a honeymoon, we're going to Maui. We were going to come back through LA, but we were just in LA. Why don't we go to Arizona and I'll show you the Grand Canyon and I'll show you Sedona. Mm-hmm. And that was all it took. Yeah. I fell in love with the Red Rocks. And then I knew I wanted to, and we began to come annually at least, and then say, okay, this is where we're going to be. So I felt called to the land. I knew.
Well, Sedona is one of those vortexes.
Right?
So, yeah.
And I can feel the energy, but it took me a bit of training myself to slow down enough to do that. Mm-hmm. I also had a knowing that I was going to work with indigenous people, but you can't just kind of walk in the room and say,
yeah,
I'm here. So I waited until that happened. And it happened through our friend Kristen Slice, who introduced me to a woman named Tracy Morris. And I did a little piece of strategic planning for a workshop she was doing. And that's what it took. And so you have to get a foot in. You have to shut up and listen. Not my strong suit. And then you figure it out as you go along. And once people trust you, you can ask questions about what does this mean, or why is that way, or what am I missing? And they will tell you. And so I have a circle of trusted people that trust me and I trust them. And if I need to ask any questions, because I wasn't raised in that, that I can get the answers, and it's just such a blessing in my life. And I like to think I'm a blessing in their life too. Who knows?
What's the passion behind wanting to work with Indigenous people? Because you've mentioned that a couple of times that you wanted to, and that was a goal.
Yeah.
It sounded like. So what was it about it that really?
I don't know that I have a good answer to that, but here's what I think is happening. I have maybe a great-great-grandmother. I'd have to go back and count. My first cousin, my mom and his mom were sisters, is living the life of a Lenape Indian.
Okay.
Because we have it in our bloodline.
Okay.
Now, 23andMe and Ancestry would tell you that I am so white, it's crazy.
Okay.
But if you track it back, there was a woman on my mom's side who was full-blooded Lenape.
Oh, wow.
So Ken had it proved and has tribal membership and now participates actively in that.
Yeah.
I do not participate actively in that, and the tribe is now, the roots are on the East Coast. So I'm sort of, but tribal people cross over and come together and, are not necessarily just hanging out with their own tribe of people is what I'm trying to say. When I was starting the work, I talked to a good friend and client, Jelana Begay Kropa at Phoenix Indian Center. And I said, I want you to know that when I do this work, it just makes me go, I slow down in a good way.
Yeah.
And she said, maybe you're one of us. And that got me to look further into it.
Huh.
Am I? But then my family's wandered away from it. So then what? So I feel like a bit of a voyeur, who's just kind of watching it go by and actively participating, doing my own work to see, am I connected to that? Am I not connected to that? But I love the work I do. And it's not all sunshine and roses.
No.
There's a lot of trauma there. And there's a lot of negative impact from basically white people who have taken land and colonized and all the things. And I keep trying to learn more and more about that and to try to start the process of undoing some of that so they can get back to where they were. They're pretty fine without us, frankly.
Yes. And, maybe taking some of their tips of like respecting the land more and, the little things.
That we're stewards of it rather than owners of it and all the things. Yeah. And you kind of know that things are sinking in with you when you see somebody say or do something and you're like, oh, and you feel that gut punch, like probably someone who was raised on a reservation and lived the life and everything. You feel that same like, oh my God, that they must feel it to a much larger degree, but it's pretty horrifying when you look at it. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And so for companies who want to have a stronger DEIB initiative, what would be a first step?
Well, hire us, of course. But other than that, there's a lot of work you can do to just figure people out. And I want to say, this makes it sound really simple, be more inclusive. But a lot of times we don't know what we don't know.
So ask questions, it sounds like.
Ask questions, listen, and stop trying to man and woman splain over the top of them why they're wrong about the way they feel about something. And I think that Tish and I worked together on the DEIB work. And I told her when we started that one of these days I was going to sit down and make a list of dumb things that Laurie has said and done, not knowing what I didn't know.
I'm a 90s kid. I'm sure I have plenty.
I'm sure we have plenty of things that we could say and do and put on that list. It'd be pretty horrifying. But sometimes you're trying to say and do the right thing. You're doing it all wrong. So I think that in a lot of cases, I know one of the things I did was somebody would, like, let's say that you said something and I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrifying that she just said that. Not that you would, but let's say you did. And then I try to explain to the person that it impacted why you didn't mean what you said. And that's a really common reaction for people. that they try to explain it away, or they try to explain their own behavior, what they said and why they want to know and why they did the thing they did. And sometimes we just need to shut up and listen and hear what we don't know that we don't know. And I think that for leaders, one of the messages I preach these days is that you can't live by the old rules of leadership anymore, because people are not the same as they were.
Yeah.
And they were changing, and they were always changing. But the pandemic just like threw a match on gasoline and went, not taking it anymore. People made decisions about how they wanted their work and life to be. They made decisions about walking away from jobs and no job to go to. So
it's amazing the number of people I've spoken to since 2020 who have completely jumped ship to different industries.
And just leaving and saying, like, in the olden days of my day, you did not leave a perfectly good job with no perfectly good job to go to.
Yeah.
And so now people do. And I think when we talk about belonging and inclusion and all those kinds of things, leaders need to first get right with themselves and realize that no matter how hard you try, there are still things you don't know that you don't know. And you will only ever change that by exposing yourself to people who are not like you. I was talking to a consultant yesterday who on LinkedIn Live that talks about going from monologue to dialogue and how difficult that is but it's doable. And I think in a divided world, and we are a divided world, not just nation, but world right now, we all got to get to some common ground and dignity and treating people right again. And I think it's going to be an uphill climb, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I figure I'm going to be 100 years old, so I have 30 plus years to go yet.
Hey, with technology, 130. Easy.
Easy. Yeah, I don't know if I want to do that.
I know my dad's like, I will be a puddle. I don't want to be that.
We'll see. I'm going for 100. Set up for that.
Yeah, the 130 maybe.
130 might be pushing it. But I do believe that my grandkids and their kids will probably get there. But yeah, I think that we really need to get back to figuring out how to civilly talk and listen to one another, and then come to common ground and come to some kind of, so how are we going to go in this? How are we going to be in this world together?
And I think something that you do talk about in your presentations and trainings is like go in with positive intent. If you're having an open dialogue, go into it knowing everyone's actually having a positive intent.
Yes.
So then that way I think it makes it like people can be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because they're not as afraid of like stepping on an eggshell.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, we all agree.
Yes.
We're coming in this with positive intent.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really important standard to put out when
it
you're
is.
having those types of conversations.
It is. And people have to trust one another to get there. Because if I don't trust you and you're saying, but I'm coming in with positive intent, I'm like, show me.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to earn the trust and then come in with positive intent. Sometimes you can earn trust faster by showing up with positive intent and then being transparent about what's going on for you and have that honest conversation. Not everybody's up for it, and not everybody's up for it every day. Stuff happens in the world, and we might be really affected by that stuff happening in the world and are in no mood today to hear your apology for what. But yes, positive intent is a really big deal. And then the transparency of what I'm saying, why I'm saying it. And I really didn't mean to have a negative impact on you, to help me understand what I did. Okay. So that goes a long way.
Definitely. I have one other topic actually from the courses we've done together that I always found really fascinating, in that when you're first getting to meet someone, don't always start with so where are you from? So instead, are you recommending that I would say, you know what, you remind me of one of my friends from back east. Are you originally from back east? Like, would that be a better example of how to, still ask the question? Because we do have the curiosity, especially here in Arizona. We're almost all from transplants from somewhere else. And there's a way to build commonality, but we want to do it in a way that also makes them feel included and belong still?
Yes.
Would that be accurate?
Yes. And where people go off the rails is where they say to somebody who's a different color than white, it's a person of color, and they might look at them, and let's say they show up and they're Asian. And I say, oh, where are you from? And you say, New Jersey. And then I say, but where are you really from?
Yeah. No.
And that's where it goes off the rails. And it's known as a microaggression. And some of the things that we commonly would say are known as microaggressions. And I think especially in our whiteness, we don't see it that way because we're trying to just get to know the person, but it is a form of racism and it's a form of like, don't say that thing. So I think for those of us who've been around a while, we need to re-examine everything we were taught and learned was okay, because it probably wasn't okay even way back when.
Right, because someone would say, "Oh, you're from Pennsylvania. So are you originally from Germany? Is it which European country?" No one does that.
Right. Nobody does, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole list of Eastern Europe, Western Europeans, Western European, places that my ancestors are from. But yeah. It's interesting.
That is and you never know is another thing too. You never know, and it shouldn't matter. But my skin's pretty white. I'm actually 12% West African.
There you are.
Who would ever think
knew?
That? Who would know?
Right.
Who would ever think that unless you look at blood?
Yeah. It's really interesting with the DNA tests, what they do show you. I do find them remarkably accurate as to what part of Germany my ancestors came from and then where they settled here.
Nice,
but that's a whole other side conversation. It's just kind of fascinating to see that. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So as we close, I would love to know, if you were to write a book, what would be the title of that tale?
Well, I've written one. I have another one underway that doesn't have a title yet. But I think my theme for my life is I want to do it my way. So I can hear the Frank Sinatra theme song in the background that I did it my way. Just makes me cry sometimes to listen to the words because it's taken me till I'm in my 60s to finally feel like I'm doing it my way. And I wish for other people that they didn't wait that long.
Right. That
we honored a world where people could be themselves, do it their way, and hopefully make the world a better place as a result of it.
Excellent. So be yourself, do it your way. And whether you are watching this as, a young adult, middle-aged, or even as a matured adult, it doesn't matter. It's about taking action and just do it your way.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, thank you so much again for being here, Laurie.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. And then how should people stay connected with you? Where should we go to stay connected with all of your trainings and content? Right.
So they can either go to, I'll give you about 3 places. One is our website, alignedatwork.com. Has everything on there and overviews of everything and a contact sheet. An easy way to get a hold of me is laurie@alignedatwork.com for email. And then I am all over LinkedIn. So if they put in Laurie Battaglia as the, Laurie and then Battaglia, you'll find me. And I am all over LinkedIn and I'm always doing events there and things like that.
Well, we'll make sure to put those links in the show notes. So look at taleswithtaylor.com for those show notes at the bottom. And
that'd be great.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Tales with Taylor. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Financial Potion YouTube channel to never miss an episode.